time, and we'll see what length of time we might need just to give this time to Ivonne Pasquali Ronchetti, whom each of us came to know and love in various ways, some much, much longer than others, and some more recently. And so I'd like to begin with a moment of silence, about a minute or two, where we just could be with our thoughts with her and her family and those that she loved. And as we gathered this morning and this evening and this very late evening, depending on which part of the world we're in, early morning, knowing that we come together to honor Ivonne, whose life force was vibrant and in many ways really wonderful. I'm going to invite anyone who wants to say a few words about her, and then I'll say some things at the end. And then I thought maybe we could start with Luca and Anna Maria. Luca is Yvonne's son. I came to know Luca when he was a young man, more than 20 years ago. And so if you guys wouldn't mind saying a word or two, thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
So, well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for everything that you are doing, and for this moment that you organized. I think that also this represents something about my mother, her work, what she did, and what she left. Yes, of course, she was very strong, very active, very everything, I would say, very alive. And during the last period, this was not the best for her, actually. First of all, for my father, that she took care of my father for almost 10 years, I would say. And the last few years were particularly tough for her. My father was, a few years ago, defined by some doctors a miracle of medicine, because he had so many diseases, and every time he was going to the doctor, he had a book of list of diseases 10 centimeters high. And so all the doctors were impressed on how he could have survived so long. He reached 84. Well, I think that most of the merit of this goes to my mother. She really took care of him as a precious watch, I would say. And when she got ill last year, it was more or less, well, she discovered to be ill actually in February, no, in April, more or less 1 year ago. And her major concern was to leave my father alone. He needed so much her assistance and her presence. And of course, this did not happen. My father passed away during summer last year. And somehow my mother was a little bit, I wouldn't say happy, but she was happy, let's say, somehow, of this, because she could not stand that my father could have been taken care by some other people or some assistant. And then, of course, she was alone after this, and she was fighting against this disease that was too big for her. And again, I think that was worst for her was the possibility of not being so active, and also that she needed assistance, and she could not stand this. She could not stand this in any way. She could not stand to lose strength, to lose abilities, to lose the possibilities to work also, because she was active till the end, till as much as she could. And so this was not fast in any case. It was let's say a slope, continuous slope that lasted 1 year. And apparently drugs were doing their job. I mean, there were some positive results, but of course the disease was too serious to fight against. There were metastases everywhere, and okay. The one of the major concern was not to suffer, not to have pain, and at least she managed to finish without suffering, without pain, and the last days just sleeping. I think at the end she didn't want to continue anymore. She wanted to finish. She wanted to reach my father, and she did. She always repeated that her life was really full of satisfaction, full of very nice people all around, very precious collaborators. And she was lucky. She was always repeating that she was lucky because her life was completely full of everything. And I think that something that is not common for everybody. So, well, she leaves a family. She leaves nephews that are more or less year around. My children. One is here. I will show you. My children. No more children. Away. One is here. This is Davide, 15 years old, and the other one is a little bit higher, older. He has a beard and is studying at university. This is Giacomo, and he's studying in Milan. Of course, these strange days, everybody is working from home, is studying from home. I guess this is for everybody. This is actually the entrance of my house. This has been transformed into my my study, my office, my working place, and all the others are working from their rooms. Let's say everybody's connected with a PC right now. So again, I thank you so much for all of this, and
Luca, thank you very much. All our hearts and minds and prayers are with you. Why we wanted to assemble today. And I can't help but hear Yvonne's voice in my head telling me that Luca was so clever when you were 20 or whatever age. And then when Davida and Giacomo started to be older, they're so clever. She just really loved you guys. Yeah, really.
Well, yes, I am also happy about them. And well, yes, for the moment, I think we are lucky for what we have, for what we are succeeding in getting. And I think she would be happy also. She was happy, and she has to continue to be happy about that.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the floor is open to anybody saying a word. If you wave, I'll unmute you so that you can speak. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sandra.
May I ask what she died of? I don't even know what she died of. Did she have cancer?
Yes, she died of well, basically it was lungs cancer.
Oh,
Even if she didn't have a primary mass, so she discovered already metastases everywhere. It was not a big mass, so nothing in real inside the lungs, but there were metastases in the brain, metastases in the bones, in the lymph nodes, and that's it.
so when she discovered it, it was already all over the place.
Yes, she discovered in April last year because, well, first it started with sight. For a period, she could not focus with both eyes perfectly. And so she corrected it with glasses, and nobody was suspecting something like this, of course. And then she had some events, some faints. She fell down twice. So we went to the hospital, and of course, they were making tomographies, and here they discovered everything. First in the brain, with a few masses there, and then, of course, with the exams that they discovered that it was spread here and there. So she was really worried about pain, about suffering, about breath, of course. But this did not happen, at least. So let's say it was a slow decrease of energies, basically energies. Energies were going, and she finished with this. Basically.
Luca, yeah, quite a few years ago, I wrote an article about PXC for Apri Onlus, which is organization for ipovedenti at Torino. And I talked about Ivonne in this article, and then I will probably be writing another one for the Unione Cechi. The next time we have a new edition, we should have had one, but because of the lockdown, we haven't. Would you give Sharon permission to give me your email so that I can send them to you?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Great. Daniela, can I call on you to say a few words? I'm unmuting you.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for having organized this, let's say, reunion of many friends of Ivonne Ronchetti. Actually, she was a well-known pathologist, an electron microscopy pioneer, and an internationally recognized scientist in the extracellular matrix field. She was a former full professor of general pathology in our University of Modena and Reggio Emilia, and actually she was the first woman appointed as a full professor in Italy. And she served as a member of several university institutional committees and became known to generation of scientists and mentored a great number of students who were trained and inspired by her passion for research. Actually, since the 60s, she has established herself internationally through a role in the development of electron microscopy techniques applied to the study of biological structures, and subsequently she started to investigate connective tissues and in particular the elastic component, and growing as one of the reference points for the scientific community and authoring more than 150 papers. Her passion for new technologies and unseen curiosity allowed her to explore the complex world of the extracellular matrix with multidisciplinary approaches, contributing to the understanding of the pathophysiology of elastic fibers. Her efforts significantly promoted the scientific networking on elastic and on ectopic calcification. And in the last 2 decades, and even after her retirement, she continued to dedicate a large part of her time to pseudoxanthoma elasticum patients. And she has a disease that she has investigated for many, many years. For patients and with patients, she founded the OPIXE Italian Association with the mission of helping patients and their families to navigate the illness. I spent 40 years together with Ivonne Ronchetti. Actually, I started to take my first steps in the university in the electron microscopy laboratory of Professor Ronchetti. And then the collaboration continued more and more closely in a synergic way over the years. I liked to discuss about the projects and ideas sitting in front of a cup of tea, actually when the rhythm of university life left research and the scientific dialect. It's more time when we can do now. We did not always agree, but new ideas and intuition came from this kind of comparison and discussion. And also during the last Christmas holidays in her armchair at home, she wanted to know how the laboratory activity proceeded, and we discussed about a recently published paper. We shared years in the laboratory bench, at the laboratory bench in the classrooms of general pathology. In numerous conferences and meetings, we often went together, and the activities in favor of the Association of PXA patients. Therefore, for me, she has been actually more than a mentor. She will be remembered by all of us in the laboratory. She will be remembered by friends, colleagues, and also students for her empathy, generosity, combined with strong determination, rigorous and meticulous scientific approaches. So thank you, Ivonne.
Yes, thank you, Ivonne. Thank you, Daniela, for sharing all that. I know that you have, as you said, more than a mentor lost, so
yeah.
Our condolences to you as well. Okay, if anyone has even a small memory or a word, yes, Alessandra, I'm unmuting you.
Okay, so I was at the receiving end of Yvonne's work. I met her in 2015 because my daughter was diagnosed with PXE at the meeting of PXE Italy. And Yvonne was the one with her humanity and participation and empathy that would take me through the first steps of recognizing the disease and understanding how to, not how to manage it, because it wasn't me actually having it, it was my daughter, and she was just 14. But I really remember her warmth and passion and kindness. She was really fantastic in helping me facing this diagnosis for my child and giving me hope and understanding and having me connect with PXE Italy. And unfortunately this year there will be no meeting. Last year it was my husband who went, and then I met you, Sharon, at PXE International at the meeting there in Philadelphia. So I'm really grateful to Yvonne. She was a fantastic doctor, not only for her scientific achievements, but also for the receiving end of her knowledge and work. So I'm really grateful to Yvonne.
Thank you. Not everyone has to speak, but if anybody does want to say a memory, Yoni? I think you have to unmute yourself for some reason. It's not letting me.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So just very briefly, good afternoon, everybody. This is a kind of sad event, but Ivonne certainly is in our mind. So as Sharon mentioned, some of us knew Ivonne for the longer time. Some learned to know her more recently. I'm one of those who knew her quite a long time. And that was well before we started working on PXC. As many of us, we were in connective tissue field, particularly in elastin biology and pathogenesis, and that led us to study PXC in much later. So in 70s, early 80s, there were a number of wonderful meetings in Italy. Several of them are Padua. One most memorable one was one in Potenza, with the follow-up meeting on the beautiful place right on the Italian coast. And in those meetings, I learned to know Ivonne as a passionate, very thoughtful scientist committed to her research. At the same time, very warm, friendly person. So Ivonne is in our mind. Condolences and our hearts go to the family, and rest in peace, Ivonne.
Judy, you're unmuted.
Oh, thank you. My husband and I attended a lecture of Ivonne some years ago. You, Sharon, probably know when that was. It was probably 06, 07. I don't know exactly. But I was, having been in the scientific field and having had to make presentations to people who were not necessarily familiar with everything that I did in my work. I was a research scientist in the materials world, very different from the medical world. But one realizes that there are people who are very talented at drawing you in and others who can put you to sleep. And she was definitely the person who drew you in, not only from an intellectual standpoint and making you understand the scientific basis for what her subject was, but she had a warmth and an approach that was so human, so connecting, that both my husband and I realized that we have to, next time we go to Italy, we have to go to Modena. Being an opera lover, that was another reason to try to go there. But she just had such an amazing ability, and I just want to say it from the standpoint of being able to present her work. It was not easy to present to those of us who, I'm a patient. I try to be educated on the subject of pseudoxanthoma elasticum, but it was not easy to go into the narrow field that she was working in. So I just want to say I am really condolences to the family. A very special person passed, and again, I just want to tell you what a special person she was. And I probably have to leave. I have another memorial actually to attend. It's been a very tough time among people in my age group. Those of us in our 70s, unfortunately, know people who have succumbed to the new coronavirus. And I just want to say thank you very much for putting this together, Sharon, and I wouldn't have missed it.
Thank you, Judy. Jeff, you're unmuted, Jeff.
I just wanted to go back to my experiences with Ivonne, which are mostly in the 80s and 90s. They began probably with a few Elastin meetings organized in Italy by Tony Tamburo and also at the Gordon conferences. But Daniela Quaglino visited and worked with me in the laboratory in Tennessee. And then in 1990, I came to Italy on a sabbatical. And the interesting feature of that sabbatical was that I was invited by Ivonne and Daniela to give a lecture at Modena. And it was my determination to do that lecture in Italian, which was at that time an initiation into lecturing in that language. It was challenging, but it was a pleasure. I had a very good time with that class. And just to point out that Ivonne, in that instance and many other instances where we met, was an enthusiastic, positive, and kind person. And those are the kinds of features of her personality that I will continue to cherish regardless of where she is in time and space. She was just a wonderful person to work with, also always positive. And I really have enjoyed working with her and remembering her very important contributions to the Elastin and PXE fields over the years.
Thanks, Jeff. Andras, I think you have to unmute yourself.
So I have very similar experience in my life when I met Ivonne, as everybody told. I'm not going to talk about her scientific achievements, but about her very warm and very nice personality. What happened that, if I remember the year, it was 2002, I applied for a research grant. It was a completely newcomer at the PXE field doing some basic biochemistry, and I never met anyone from of this field, only from papers. And I was invited to go to Modena because there was a special small meeting, Sharon, and I don't remember who else was there, but definitely Sharon and Ivonne. And we just sat down in Yvonne's office and started to talk about science. And it was so easy going. And so I would say, like talking to my students or talking to my supervisor earlier, open from the first second. And then we went out for dinner, great place. And she talked so much about Modena and her previous, and her family and her life. And then there were a few, 2 or 3, I guess, maybe 4 occasions when we organized a little conference in Budapest and Yvonne could come every other year. And at one time she learned that with my wife, we are going to travel a little bit in Italy. And she thought that it is imperative to go to Modena. And of course we went to their house and met her husband. And it was just great. I really had such a warm feeling when I remember back her. And I simply feel gifted that I met her.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andras. Anybody else? And you want your voice in here from your perspective? Even a smallest story. Okay, So I'll just close us with a few words of my own from my perspective. So I think all of you know my children were diagnosed in 1994 with PXE, and we set out to meet scientists like Yoni and others, and cross paths with Bob and Jeff and lots of other people. One of the places we went right away in the year after they were diagnosed was Modena to meet Ivonne and to not tell you anything you don't already know, Luca. Again, this warmth of this woman was just astounding. And I was being an imposter because I have no science credentials, but I was pretending that I knew what I was talking about so that I could get in the doors of scientists. And right away, I knew from her and the same from Daniela in this laboratory that their passion for understanding was just incredible. And Yvonne's warmth was astounding. And I remember very well the generosity of the people of Modena who were PXers that were coming together. They took our children and who were 5 and 7 years old off to see sites. And Yvonne sat down and really explained a lot to me, basic science that I didn't know and lots of things. And then we were driving a motorhome. And so she invited us to park in her driveway inside the gate there and park the motorhome and sleep there, and then into the house for evening meals. That it astounded me that she would come home from working in the laboratory all day, and it was by then 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and she would make this wonderful meal for us. And of course, as not very bright Americans, we would expect that this amazing pasta was the whole meal, and then find, no, there was more courses, and it just was really lovely. And your dad was, you know, such a warm man, so interested in us and in what we were doing. Really, really heartwarming to me. I spent a lot of time with Ivonne over all these years. I am really grateful that in the last month, before she became very ill, we had a lot of email back and forth. I think she just had time and I had time to correspond with her. So we kind of ranged through our experiences with each other. Two funny ones I'll tell, and I have many, but I'll just tell two. One was the year after we first came to Italy, she came to the United States and she stayed with us. And I remember on our way to a meeting, we were in Sharon, Massachusetts, where we live. And I said, would you like coffee? And she said, yes. And so we went to Dunkin' Donuts, which, you know, is the chain. And I came out of the restaurant, the Dunkin' Donuts, with a grande coffee for Ivonne. And Ivonne said, I said, to drink, not to take a bath. It was very funny. And I learned that real coffee, it comes only this big. I now have a son who, Ivonne, because she taught him about coffee, he buys the best espresso machine and makes his coffee each day. The other funny story was one where a couple years into all of this, Ivonne wanted to study the fibroblasts of carriers, and so I'm a carrier, and she asked, could they do just a little biopsy? And in the United States, a biopsy is just about the size of a pencil eraser in your skin. So I said, sure. She asked me would I strip to my underwear so she could look at all my skin, and she did. And then she had someone come in who could do the surgery. She took like 1 inch by 2 inches square out of my skin. It was amazing. It was like, oh my goodness. And then gave us bandages, and we were traveling. We're going to Florence and going to see some things. And it turned out that most of the pharmacies wouldn't give us more Band-Aids because they were not something you just pick up the way you might in America. So that was also very dear to me. And the last thing I'll say is that the warmth of her, as several people have already said, not only as a scientist, a warm scientist, which is really terrific, but I found that this powerful, powerful woman who still could be so gentle and didn't have to have a rough edge to her warmth and to her being as a mother, as a wife, as a woman, was a real role model for me all these years. And I have lost a very, very good friend in the death of Ivonne Ronchetti. And I'm really happy she's not suffering anymore. And I'm very happy, and it sounds horrible, that your father died before she did, so that she didn't die worrying about him. And she said she wasn't worrying about any of you, that she knew you, Luca, and Davida and Giacomo all are on your way to being magnificent human beings, and that she loved you very deeply. So thank you. All right, thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, everybody of you, for all these words. And yes, my mother was able to share energies in different fields, giving maximum of her energies and her positive attitudes in all these fields. So she was a scientist, she was a professor, she was a teacher. Okay, but she was also a normal person, a wife, a mother, and she really spent a lot of time also and energies and capacities in this. She was a wonderful host for everybody, not only for colleagues, for everybody. She comes from the country. She comes from not a rich family. Of course, I was not there, but apparently it was told that when she was 5 years old, she was 5 years, so determined. She was only speaking dialect, by the way. They were living in the countryside with the cows, with yes, with basically not many rich things around. And already at that time, she was saying that she wanted to travel the world because of knowledge. This was a
5.
Well, yes, 5 years old. So it was during the war time, okay? So the Second World War. And fortunately, her parents, my grandparents, supported her. Of course, she was very determined, and maybe even if they didn't support her, she would have done this on her own. But in any case, she was supported in all decisions. And also having a girl studying and continuing to study to go to university at the time was maybe not that common, especially coming from this type of family. She wanted to do that, and she managed to do that, and she managed to do exactly what she wanted. And also there is some merit of my father, because they met, she was not going to the university yet. Yeah, she was 18, 19, something like this, 18 years old. No, even less, 17 years old. So she was finishing her high school, and I don't remember what she wanted to do exactly. Maybe study medicine or something like this. But it was my father convincing her, well, why medicine? You want to do research. So in Italy, at least at that time, research was maybe better to go and choose biology, because medicine was more connected just to being in the hospitals, and at that time was not connected so much to research, even if it is not true, we know that. So for this, she started biology, and everything went as we know. And but in any moment, she was always open to everybody, to the rest of the family, the large family with all the relatives, and organizing at different levels. So she could change from English, not to Latin, of course, not Latin we do not use, but from high cultural things to speaking dialect about ordinary life things. So she was like this, no difference in relationships, no difference in treating with people. There were not better classes or lower classes. Everybody was the same. And when she started to get involved with PXA, with patients, with real people having problems. Before she was not doing this, she was studying on, let's say, not with real people close. But I can say that when she started with this, this was a new part of the career, a very motivating part of the career. She was really happy and worried and concerned about all of you, about dealing with people. Maybe this is something that she missed, having, let's say, dedicated the first part of the life to pure research in the sense of without having to do with people, with patients. So, well, thank you again to all of you for being here, for your thoughts. And also I received a lot of messages by so many people that I do not even list. All of them were very kind and with some, let's say, specific thought, specific event that was remembered. And I think all this, I will preserve it. And if someone wants, I will share with them. With Daniela, for example, I will share with her all these thoughts and messages that were sent to this email address that I prepared for this. And okay, thank you.
I will thank you, Luca, Anna Maria, Davida, and Giacomo for joining us today. Daniela for joining us as well. I'll unmute everyone now so that everyone's voice can be in the room to say goodbye to each other. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Sarah. Stay well, everybody.
Yes, be well.
Thank you.
There are the grandsons. Good to see you guys.
Thank you, Sharon, for organizing.
Bye.
Bye-bye.